during the time of David and Solomon, there was this great tradition of wisdom, and that's why the 5 wisdom books that are right in the middle of the Old Testament are very much associated with that period of time, that when David and Solomon were in charge. And so you've got these 5 books, and the 5 books of wisdom are sandwiched by 17 books, which you broadly call historical books, and 17 books which are prophetic books. So you've got this kind of structure of 17 and then 5, 17. And so these 5 in the middle, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs, are this little section of books that need to be held together. So the danger is that you pick your favourite type of wisdom book and you just read that one, and to the neglect of the others. So you could just read Proverbs, for example, which is a selection of practical, down-to-earth, homespun, if you like, sayings, and you could just read that and you could think, yeah, life's it's pretty straightforward and simple. It's, if I do this, then I'll get this, and that's how you could read Proverbs. And then you've got Ecclesiastes and Job that kind of say, yeah, well, I tried some of that and it didn't work. and that's why you have to hold them together, because then you could just read Job and you would think, flip, life's really hard, and even if you do your best, it might not go as you think it should. Or you read Ecclesiastes and you think, what is the point of life? and so we have to hold these 5 books together, because it's almost like they have a conversation with each other, and each of them contains something really important about life that will help us and that will speak into different situations that we find ourselves in. So it's important, and one of the reasons that they're associated with David and Solomon is because some of them are attributed to David and Solomon. So lots of the Psalms are attributed to David, and Proverbs, Ecclesiastes and Song of Songs have all got strong associations with Solomon. So that's one of the reasons. But Job comes first in the sequence, and so Job is all about suffering. It's this guy who seemingly is the most righteous and holy man around, and suddenly life starts to go really difficult, and things get really difficult, and Job starts to wonder, why is this happening to me? And there's this big conversation that happens. It's between Job and his very unhelpful friends, often unhelpful friends, and he's there, and he's got very ill. He's got all his sores all over him. He's lost his cattle. He's lost his children. He's lost his house and everything. He was a very wealthy man, and now he's got nothing. And there's one point when his wife comes up to him, and in moments like that, you think, you just need a bit of encouragement from your wife. And his wife comes and she says, "Why don't you curse God and die?" Now, I don't know about you, but it's not the most encouraging thing when everything else goes wrong. And so Job's like, yeah, well, thanks for that, love. And then his friends come and they give him other things and try and explain it to him. And eventually, after chapters and upon chapters of these conversations happening, God speaks. And you're just like, oh, thank you, thanks to God for speaking at this moment. And God speaks, and so it's this huge conversation. Why do bad things happen to good people? And in the midst of it all, and this is typical of a lot of the Hebrew writings, in the midst of all this suffering, Job sees some precious things. Often you find the gold in the darkest places, in the most difficult situations. And in Job 19:25, he says, "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand upon the earth." I know that my Redeemer lives, and in the end he will stand upon the earth. After Job, you get to the Psalms. And the Psalms are basically the hymn book of the Jewish people. They 150 different Psalms, and it's one of those hymn books that it's an unusual thing if you compare it to a Christian hymn book, especially a lot of the modern worship, in that it contains all kinds of different emotions. It's not just how much I love God, it's not just how great God is and how he helps me in my life. There's also a lot of anger in there. God, would you kill my enemies? And there's a lot of despair, there's lament, and there's darker emotions that actually are part of the human experience. And it's, to me, it seems like pretty much whatever you're going through in your life at the moment, you could find something in the Psalms that would help you and would help to express the emotions that you're feeling. Also, for us as Christians, it's really interesting because it has loads of prophetic moments that seem to point us to Jesus, especially if you think about Psalm 22, which Jesus quotes on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? And it goes on to have this description, and it seems like it's describing Jesus being crucified. And so there's loads of amazing bits like that in the Psalms as well. After the Psalms comes the Proverbs. Lots of them attributed to Solomon and others. And Proverbs is about wisdom. It's about wisdom. And in chapter 8 of Proverbs, there's this personification of wisdom. What would wisdom look like if it was a person? And it looks quite like Jesus. It's interesting if you read it, it looks like Jesus. And Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1 verse 24 that Jesus is the wisdom of God. Jesus is the wisdom of God. And the word is Sophia, a female word, the Sophia of God, the wisdom of God. So when wisdom is personified, it's personified as a woman. And Paul says that Jesus is the wisdom of God. He's the one who perfectly represents all of God's wisdom to us. And then we get to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes takes 12 chapters to basically tell us that life is meaningless. and it's meaningless without God, because right at the end, Solomon or whoever it is says in 12:13, he says, "Now all has been heard, here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commands, for this is the whole duty of man." And it gives voice. If you're thinking, I've pursued this career, but it just feels meaningless to me now. I've achieved my ambition in life, but it just feels like I've not achieved anything, and where's the meaning in life? And this is what Solomon explores, or whoever wrote it. What is life all about? What is the meaning of life? And ultimately Solomon says, fear God and keep his commands. Do what God wants us to do. Follow God. And that's where meaning is found. Finally, Song of Songs. And Song of Songs is about sex. It's a love poem, a very intimate love poem between a man and a woman. And interestingly, in that culture, the woman has a voice. The woman is able to speak, and she's free to say what she wants. And so it's this beautiful, intimate, explicit poem about this physical love between a man and a woman. And often Christians are shy to talk about these issues, but actually the Bible is not. The Bible doesn't hold back in celebrating God's gift of physical love to humanity. And some people have seen that as a symbol, the intimacy there, as a symbol of God's intimate relationship with his people and Christ's marriage to the church. But ultimately it's about that gift that God has given us of physical love.